Today we're going to be creating a project using Zentangles, and we're going to start off by drawing a leaf, and then we're going to be adding some different Zentangles in the background. Before we begin, I just wanted to share with you that Zentangles is a way of just being relaxed, and you're doing a lot of structured patterns and repetition in it. So you'll notice when you look at these lines, the tangles itself, and the feeling of Zen is you're doing a lot of smaller details, you're working in smaller areas. So when we're working on this, feel free to change up what you create and use larger things. A lot of artists that do Zentangles are just doing really tiny, different squares. And it's supposed to be small, but you can work on larger pieces like we're going to do a little bit today. In our room that I have shared here, I have lots of other YouTube videos and tutorials of drawing different types of patterns with your Zentangles. And I also have a little link for us to be able to find different leaf designs to really start with creating our initial leaf and then moving to our background too. All we're going to be using is a 9x12 paper. We're going to use a black marker. You can also use a small fine-tipped Sharpie if you have one of those, or you can even use a pen because it's a little bit of a smaller tip. So depending on where you're creating these, those are all those other options. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about complementary colors and contrasting colors, and just have you see this really neat video on how, color can change with the different backgrounds when it's next to something, right? It can interact in a different way. So what we'll be doing today is using our oil pastels to create either a warm or cool spectrum, right, on here. And then the background, we're going to keep black and white. So let's get started on our Zentangle piece. So today we're going to be starting working on our leaves. We're going to start with the leaf design first, and we want to make it rather large on our piece. So think about, where do you want it to be? And also, what direction do you want it to go? Do you want it to go this way, or would you like it to go this way? So we're going to be starting today. I'm going to have mine here, and what I'm going to do is just draw a large style leaf on this paper. I've put a few in the slideshow on Google Classroom, and you can look at that as well as you get started, or you can follow along and copy with me. As you're making your leaf, try to have it take up a good portion of your paper, because we're going to be using oil pastels inside our leaves. So try to make them on a little bit of a larger scale or bigger size. So that way it's easier for you to go in and have that powerful pop and not have to fill your entire background with a lot of Zentangles. So the larger you do it, the more leaves you add to it, the better it will be. You'll notice as I'm building and drawing these a little bit further, I'm just repeating the same shape, moving a little bit down and going in. But I'm also going back and just adding a darker line or thickness around some of the edges. I'm not doing it to every single side, but I really want this leaf plant to be able to stand out. So you can do that if you so choose. You don't have to. And then I went back to my stem line here, and I just drew a nice thicker line. Now that I have this part done, the next thing I'm going to do is take out my oil pastels, and I'm going to start coloring in these different areas. So I'm going to be using these different reds, yellows, and oranges. And think about where you want the darkest color to go first. I usually go dark to medium to light. So we're going to blend these on top of only our flowers. So I'm going to try my best. Don't worry if you see any of the white showing through, because when you take your next color, and we're using the Crayola Portfolio series here, it'll blend really nicely on top and it'll cover in any of those areas. So I can blend my color right on top of the other one here. And we're just going to slowly grow it around. So when we made our flowers, we wanted them to be rather large, so it's easier for us to color. Okay. So you're going to keep growing some of these, whatever you're feeling like. Notice I go back in, I can just blend over anything. Even if it's on this, you can just kind of wipe it off. Sometimes I use just a Kleenex and I'll wipe it off that way. But go through and finish all of them. Now that we're done with our leaf and adding in the oil pastels, take this time to go into looking up those Zentangle videos that I have in our Google Classroom, or you can also just, I've got a packet in there as well, so you can see some different simple Zentangle pieces, or even feel free to follow along with me here. You'll notice that as we're always doing this, it's good to go nice and slow, and the most important part is to remember to breathe, because breathing is part of, Zentangle process is, you're going nice and slow. You're calming your body, you're calming your mind. It's supposed to be a little bit of a relaxing piece. So as I'm building these, a lot of these samples or pieces of Zentangles that I'm putting into my piece, I looked at those different YouTube videos I've linked into that slide for us, as well as the packet I also have linked on that slideshow for us too. So it's a lot of going nice and slow. Right here, I'm using a normal Crayola marker because the marker itself helps with covering a bigger area nice and thick. It's nice and wide, easier to color in. If I'm using a Sharpie, it tends to dry faster. Lots of Zentangle pieces are done with a very, very fine tip pen called a micron pen. And it's got an ink inside of it, and it's really super fine. So you'll notice I'll use a fine tip Sharpie in this part of the video too to show you some of that differences. If you had like a pen, you could always do that too. I'll also in the classroom have those fine tip ones for us to do smaller areas. Fine tip Sharpies are not meant to cover a big area. They're more for smaller areas to go nice and slow because the faster you go, the ink just can't catch up. So constantly feel like turning your paper, looking up some different ideas and just working slowly from there. We'll use a couple art classes in order to work on this piece. Pencils are sometimes used in order to add some extra shadows or shading to pieces to really pop. This particular piece is called a honeycomb Zentangle. And then I've also used my pencil to go back and just add in some shading, and I smudged a little bit to accentuate some of those other Zentangles. So as you can see, you can notice that the variety of different thicknesses of markers really makes a difference between that thin Sharpie one and the regular permanent, Crayola marker, as well as a permanent marker, all give some different appearances and designs. I made sure I added in areas of a lot of darkness as well as areas of lightness, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with in yours.